Welcome responders to our brief overview of AOMHeal's trauma healing model for those of you preparing to deploy for our shaping or supporting phases. My name is Mary Elizabeth Johnson, but I go by my middle name Elizabeth, or L for short. I attend Crossbridge Community Church and Antioch Church in San Antonio, Texas, and I'm an LCSW who specializes in trauma therapy and have a passion for crisis disaster work. When we go through a crisis, it provides a time of both opportunity and danger because it rattles our entrenched automatic ways of being, rendering our familiar ways of coping as inefficient and leaving us open to becoming better or bitter. As a responder during the shaping and supporting phases of deployment, we are not attempting to do the deep work of trauma healing from a crisis. It will be too soon to know this need. Our goal is to mitigate the long-term impacts of trauma that occur when individuals do not have safe, nurturing relationships and resources to support them in the immediate and short-term aftermath of a crisis. Acts of Mercy Heal's Ministry of Reconciliation trauma healing model has been put together by the core group of allied therapists from the Acts of Mercy Heal branch and is an adaptation of Nora Poling and Jonna Wally's 6 Hearts healing model, integrated with the neuroscience of the 4 S's of secure attachment: safe, soothed, seen, and secure in relational healing. The first heart is God's original design, where we experienced relational oneness with God and others without shame. The second heart is trauma, where we experience our hearts being broken by sin. And we have all experienced trauma because the ultimate trauma is our separation from God. The third heart is walking in darkness, where our hearts are living in the uncertainty, loneliness, fear, and shame about what happened. The fourth heart is stabilization, where we surrender to connection because we are feeling safe enough to face and feel the pain of our losses by finding validation and acceptance of our story from others. The fifth heart is restoration and redemption, where Jesus heals the lies of who we are and who he is, thus restoring us to our original design of oneness and belonging and bringing good from evil and suffering. And finally, the sixth heart is reconciliation, where we are taking the comfort we have received from God through Jesus to others in order that they may be reconciled to him. So using Acts of Mercy Heal's Ministry of Reconciliation trauma healing model, our ministry as responders during these phases is being in the sixth heart of reconciliation, walking out the love of Jesus by radiating his positive resonance in us through the 4 S's: safe, soothed, seen, and secure, to victims in the third heart of walking in darkness, living in the uncertainty, loneliness, fear, and shame about what happened, so that they may experience authentic connection and belonging in order to begin to transition into the fourth heart of stabilization. Myself, along with Shelley Reed, a clinical psychologist from Antioch, Phoenix, will be sharing what the practical steps of the 4 S's during these phases of deployment look like.
So the first S is for safe. The people that we encounter when we're deployed with Acts of Mercy have just gone through something that's unsafe, and they're on guard against further danger. And while we're there providing for their physical safety, connecting them with resources like food and water and shelter, we also want to provide a sense of psychological safety through the way that we interact with them. These people, their worlds have just been turned upside down, and now there may be strangers showing up on the scene or even entering their home. And so we know that we're there for a reason with good intentions to be helpful, but to them, they don't know us. We're just random people who have shown up on the scene. And so they're feeling more vulnerable than ever, and we want to be sensitive to that. So we want to create that sense of safety with our presence and the way that we interact with people. So we want to consider our tone of voice and our body language. We want to consider the pace of our speech and overall be intentional to be warm and respectful and gentle. We basically want it to feel like we're giving them a hug with our words and just by our presence and being there. We want to introduce ourselves and let them know what we're doing. before we do it and get permission to do so, and kind of share as we're going what it is that we're doing. So the people that we're encountering have just had something happen to them that they didn't choose and that they certainly didn't want. And so giving them choice in what happens next in the process is just one simple thing that we can do to help start their healing process. So for example, I might say, "Hi, my name is Shelly. I'm with Acts of Mercy, and I'm here to clean the mud out of your house. Is that okay?" So we're creating a sense of safety physically through the work that we're doing, and also psychologically as we interact with them. And yet still, even though the natural disaster has passed, they may not feel that sense of safety in their bodies. And so that takes us to our next S, which stands for soothe. So after something really difficult or traumatic happens, our sympathetic nervous system gets activated, this fight or flight kind of response, which creates a feeling of anxiety and just activation in our bodies. And so we want to help them to get grounded into the present moment and be able to connect with us and other people in order to reestablish that sense of safety in their bodies, and to help their bodies and their nervous systems know that the traumatic event is over and that they really are safe. And so we can introduce this in a really gentle way by saying something like, "Hey, when I feel overwhelmed or anxious or stressed, there's something that I found that's been helpful for me to make it a little bit better. Would you like to try that out with me now? Would you be interested in that?" And if they're up for that, then we can teach them these skills and practice with them a couple of times, so that they will be able to recall these skills and be able to use them whenever they need to after we've already left. And so all these skills that we're going to be going over right now are skills that don't require any additional materials to have on hand. They can just be done anywhere and with anyone that we encounter. And so the first one is called a butterfly hug. And so you can either do it on your shoulders like this, or right here under your collarbones. Don't overthink it, just kind of whatever feels more comfortable for you. But it's just this slow back and forth bilateral stimulation. I won't get into all the science of it, but basically the back and forth is calming to our nervous systems, and it can help chill out the activation that's happening in our bodies and help induce the parasympathetic nervous system that calms down the fight or flight and just makes us feel at ease. So the butterfly hug. So you can just sit with someone and breathe and do the butterfly hug together. Simple as that. Another one, speaking of breathing, is called box breathing or square breathing. And so you inhale for 4 seconds and then hold it for 4 counts, exhale for 4 counts, and then hold that for 4. So the imagery of a box can sometimes be helpful. You can have someone draw this out with a pencil on some paper. You can grab a stick in the mud and do this on their muddy floor. You can have someone do it like this in the air with their fingers. They can just imagine the box in their minds. You can really do it however you'd like. The more kind of systems and involved you make it, the more helpful that it can be, the more embodied the person is as they're doing it. So breathe in for 4 counts, hold it for 4 counts, breathe out for 4 counts, and hold it for 4, and repeat. The next one is called 3-2-1. So this is using our senses, our 5 senses in our body. We have our sense of sight, our sense of hearing, our sense of smell and taste and touch. And so this uses 3 of our senses, our sense of sight, hearing, and touch. And so what you do is you just look around the room or wherever you are and identify 3 things that you see, 3 things that you hear, and 3 things that you feel in your body. So it's not happy, sad kind of feel, but what do you feel in your body? Like I just felt my eyebrows raise up a little bit as I was talking. I can feel the vibrations in my throat as I'm speaking. And I can feel the warmth of my hand on my leg. That kind of feel. So 3 things you see, 3 things you hear, 3 things you feel, and then cycle back through with 2 more things you see, 2 more things you hear, 2 more things you feel that are different from before, and then once more with 1 more thing that you see, hear, and feel. And so the other one is focusing on your peripheral vision. When we're in that fight or flight stage where our system is just so activated, our sense of sight actually gets narrowed, where we're just this tunnel vision. And so one way to override our systems and to help our parasympathetic nervous system kick into gear, where we're relaxed and feeling at ease, is to try to broaden our perspective and to broaden our view. So you could have someone focus on something ahead and then see if they can soften their eyes and expand their vision, or say, hey, look at me. Can you see this over here? And try to help them to broaden their vision to see things in the periphery. And that can help create a sense of ease and calm in their bodies. Lastly, one thing to keep in mind is that we might need to use some of these skills ourselves before we enter into one of these situations. Because if we're going to be there and we're going to have a soothing presence and bring a sense of psychological safety, we need to be calm and collected so that we can attune to them, because we want to help them to regulate their systems. And in order to do that, we want to have a calm nervous system ourselves as we go in. And also, of course, we always want to be praying and seeking the Lord, asking the Holy Spirit, God, what do you have for this person here? What should I say? What should I do? And to help us, to have the Holy Spirit help us to be attuned and connected with the people that we're loving.
The next S is seen. Every person needs to know that their life matters and has purpose. God designed our brains and nervous systems to seek meaning about everything we experience in order to feel safe and find value in our lives. Being able to acknowledge and validate someone's story with compassion helps them to feel seen and affirms to them that they matter. One of the survival tactics our brain can utilize after a traumatic event is minimizing the event's impacts on us, such as, my house was not destroyed as much as my neighbor's, or I was not injured as badly as my brother was. We want to emphasize that everyone has a story and that each person's story is important, so we cannot compare it to others. During the shaping and supporting phases of deployment, we're not providing counseling. We're just being present and feeling with them in a safe, calm, and supportive way. We can do this by putting away distractions, adopting an open, receptive body language, and getting down at their level. Focus on hearing what they want to tell you. We do not want to push them if they are not ready to talk. When you do encounter someone who desires to share some of their story, here are the 4 questions we want to ask them to begin to support their brain and nervous system in finding their own meaning from it. What happened? How did you feel? What was the worst part for you? And what got you through? Try to understand their perspective and respond in a supportive and non-judgmental manner. Acknowledge that you understand what they're saying by using short phrases like, I hear you, or that makes sense, as well as nonverbal cues like maintaining eye contact as culturally appropriate, leaning in, nodding along, and mirroring their facial expressions like concern or sadness to show interest. Listen without jumping in to fix or correct their viewpoint. Some validating statements that you can use to demonstrate compassion and empathy would be, wow, thank you so much for sharing that with me. I don't know what to say, but I'm so glad you felt safe enough to share that with me. I'm so sorry that happened to you, and I'm so glad you're here. I can't even begin to imagine what you're going through. It makes sense that you feel sad. What you're feeling is normal. I'm not surprised you're feeling angry after what happened. It's okay to not be okay right now. You're a survivor. I'm proud of you. I value your ability to keep holding on to hope. And then lastly, we have secure, the last S. Secure is the result of showing consistency in the other 3 S's and leaves the individual with a sense of trust and confidence in the relationship, knowing they belong. So for the shaping and supporting phases of deployment, it is how we wrap up our encounters with those we've served with the goal of fostering a sense of belonging. We want to make sure we are honoring the sacred space of the devastating time in their lives they've just shared with us by providing true encouragement, not just saying something nice in an effort to make the problem go away. This means we want to avoid giving unsolicited advice like, you should just, or making minimizing statements such as, at least it's not as bad as, or band-aiding with toxic positivity such as, just look on the bright side, or everything happens for a reason. True encouragement comes when we've entered into the painful experience with them and acknowledged the weight of the struggle and pain without dismissing it, and then pointing them to the hope we have in Jesus. If you're deployed in an area where we're unable to share about Jesus, we can still point them to the teams that will continue the work with them and a specific memory of the encounter that you will be taking home with you. Thus, we're ending with them knowing that we are carrying a part of them with us wherever we go and that they're not forgotten. Some examples of true encouragement statements you can use to close with would be, I wish I could stay here and talk with you more. Unfortunately, I have to go. Unfortunately, I'm out of time for now. I'm grateful for the time I got to spend with you. My teammates are going to be back on Friday to continue working with you. Is there anything you would like for me to make sure they focus on next time? I'll be thinking about your kind smile after I return home. And for this one, using a specific memory from your time together. An example, I can't imagine I'll ever forget about the frog that jumped on my arm when we were moving those tree limbs off your driveway. And of course, you're adding your own flair to what was meaningful for you. So then, depending on the population you're working with, where praying with someone is appropriate, asking, how can I continue to pray for you when I go back home? And if they're receptive to that, asking, would it be okay if I pray that for you now? These are the 4 S's. Thank you for your support in bringing the love of Jesus and being his hands and feet to those who are experiencing some of the hardest times of their lives. If you have any questions about the information presented, please reach out to your team lead for further assistance. God bless you.